Morning, everyone. End of the week, Wisdom's Chats, and our normal crowd, which is we kind of getting to know how each other thinks. But it's interesting because every topic you come from a slightly different angle, and you get to hear different ideas and opinions. I got a message from Steve yesterday saying he absolutely loves this platform. Because of the diversity of thinking, and so that's just appreciate that as well. So our topic for today is around our public and personal selves. How much of ourselves do we put out into the world, and how much do we reserve for who we are as individuals, or maybe for a select few, and how much is that dictated by what we perceive to be other people's expectations? So I think, Vernay, how do you feel about starting? Are you thinking there? Lovely to hear your opinion.
I think I sort of agree with Trevor, but not as adamantly as he is about it. But I also agree with Herman that you do need to face your the negative side of you, your problems and your and I don't believe you need to get your bad side all the time. Sorry.
You froze there. So...
Okay, am I back?
No. Do you want to just repeat what you said? I don't know if you froze or I froze, but I missed a little bit of what you said.
Okay, I said that I agree with Trevor in that one does need to keep one's bad behavior or negative side to oneself. But I also agree with Herman that you do need to face them. But I really believe they should be done in private, and they should be done in a safe space. You need to have either a very good self-awareness where you can sit down with yourself and face your failings or your the problems that you have, to sit down and face them and analyze yourself. If you're unable to do that, you need to have a trusted person you can talk to, or a psychologist. And I believe that you need to deal with them, because if you don't deal with them, they are not going to get better. And I think that people do have expectations of you, and if you behave badly, that is what's going to be expected. And if you're always on your best behavior and never have any faults, the admiration of you or the outview of you could be very unrealistic. And Trevor Carty, spoke about Michael Jordan and that, and I think it is unrealistic to have a hero who you believe has no faults and has no drawbacks. And we all fall down sometimes. But I firmly believe that you do need to be on your best behavior. You can't just be, I've got a friend who says, well, she's just outspoken and speaks her mind. But it's not always necessary. It can be hurtful to people. And you need to moderate your behavior. Don't change who you are, but sometimes just moderate your behavior so that you don't hurt other people. It's good to say what people need to hear, but not in a hurtful way. And I think we should put our best foot forward all the time. And there are societal norms, and I think we should abide by them, just for a good social sort of cohesion. And yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Thanks, Vernay. Great thinking, and always just helps just to solidify the topic and gets us going in the direction. Trevor, I don't know if he's sort of behind the screen, so maybe I'll just leave him for the moment. Are you there, Trevor? Because I wanted to come to you because you kind of raised this topic in many ways, and so what is it that is top of mind for you around it?
Okay, so sorry, I was distracted. So I only caught half of what Vernay said, but I did put something into the chat facility because I think this discussion came out of Herman and I having something of a disagreement, which is not unusual, different perspectives. And it was stimulated by a thought which came from Zig Ziglar for me, who used this particular quote: share your give up goals freely and your go up goals carefully. And the twist that we were having a discussion around was the good things that you've done in life, the extraordinarily good things that you've done in life versus the extraordinarily stupid things that you've done in life. And as I'm sitting here, at my age, looking back, I mean, there are so many stupid, silly things that I've done. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to give Herman some ammunition to have a go at me with by giving my little box of stupid things that I've done, because I can also go to the other side of the ledger, which is filled with a ton of phenomenal things that I've actually done. And I think the thought and the discussion that we were having, and I don't know what Herman's perspective is versus my perspective, but this little comment of Zig's, if I had to do a twist of it, I'd say share. And you know who used the word to describe this for me yesterday was Steve Carter. Amplify the phenomenal things that you have done. And allow those to build up your self-belief, your self-confidence, and who you are, and recognize that because we had this discussion that everyone is flawed, and I think that's where this came from, that I don't put people up onto pedestals. I don't care who you are, because they will absolutely disappoint you. And if you understand that everyone is just as flawed as you are, then I think a lot of people would, I would hope they, don't let them agree with me. No one agrees with me. My thought is this: amplify everything that you have done that is fantastic. Live with that, pat yourself on the back for that. The silly things that you have done, as long as you don't have to go to confession that people can hold against you, and you've got bodies and skeletons lying in the cupboard that are really deep down bad things, and it's a little box of silly, stupid things that you've got. Forgive yourself, mate. Don't ask other people to forgive you, is perhaps where my thought is coming from. So I don't know if that helps you going down the route. My apologies, Vernay. I got pulled to one side, so I didn't get to understand. I think Vernay actually makes me feel like I'm a better person, because I don't know, when she turned around and said Trevor had an impact on my life, was it Trevor Cartier or was it this Trevor she was talking about, you see? Oh, my fault. Okay.
Yeah, it's nice when other people make us feel good about ourselves. Hey, it's a good thing. This Trevor does that for me a lot, so I'm very grateful for that. Herman, I have to come to you. Trevor, Trevor points you out, and but it would be lovely to hear your perspective.
Well, I must correct one thing. Trevor doesn't really know me, because if he would share anything with regards to his shortcomings, that would stay with Herman. It's got nothing to do with anybody else, and I would never use it against him for the very simple reason I also know my shortcomings. I'm not quite as secretive about them, so I'm willing to share them. For example, I mentor a couple of young people, and quite frankly, I made some major blunders in my life, and I share them with them, not to be a hero in retrospect because I've kind of coped with them and grown out of them, but simply to give them an indication that not every mistake we have to make ourselves, but we can learn from mistakes of others. Going back to public and personal persona and what we kind of want to project, I think that's very often context specific. Again, in going back to the example of mentoring, I would share things with them which I may not share with the next person I'm meeting for a cup of coffee, because there might be no need. And I think we also need to be very, very careful. And we had a fantastic example the last couple of days where somebody very high up in the South African hierarchy, namely our Chief Justice, put his food into his mouth like nobody's business. I mean, it was absolutely, you don't make statements like that, you know, the devil and the vaccines. And I mean, I don't know whether you've heard his little prayer, but quite frankly, I was shocked. So I think we need to be careful what we want to share with others. Yet I think there are situations where we need to be open. Thank you.
Thanks, Herman. I think that point about context is really, really important. And then, as you say, you know, this creating, we do have expectations of people in positions and what they should and shouldn't say, given the authority that they have in their position. So Edward, let's come to you and find out a little bit more about your thoughts around the topic.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to disappoint you this morning, because in your email you said we were going to have meaty discussions. Well, I'm going to talk about my veganism and being a vegan. In the email you said we were going to discuss what is public and what is private, especially as it relates to expectation of others and our credibility in the eyes of others. And I'm going to deal with the second bit first. Some years ago, I was asked to be an ambassador for a vegan snack brand. And one of these things, you have a subscription and they send you a selection of snacks every couple of weeks in the post. And they asked me for a photograph to go on the website. So I chose one of my best photographs and sent it up there, and it's great. And it's a picture of me finishing the Kalahari and having a castle lager. And about 2 months later, the company phoned me up and said, could you send in another photograph? Because people have said it's not a very healthy picture. And I said to them, do you know what? I've just run 250 kilometers through a desert. I doubt any of your customers could do that. They're probably all pasty looking ill vegans. I'm probably the healthiest person on your mailing list, but I understand, yes, the customer might not always be right, but the customer's always the customer. So I changed the picture. And then just recently I went on an Instagram course, because I don't really understand Instagram, and I still don't. And we had to do a series of posts for 5 days and tell a story and end with the big sort of, reveal. And I've just been reading the chat about Bovril and cauliflower ears. So I did a series of pictures, and then we had to have them critiqued by the person running the course. And when she came to the last photograph, she said, Edward, you can't have that photograph in there. It will ruin your brand. It will ruin your fitness brand. And the picture was me drinking a castle after finishing the Kalahari Akravis Extreme Marathon. And I said, it doesn't, you don't understand. You don't understand. that is my brand. And I think you guys know that's my brand. All the guys in networking in the UK know that's my brand. And for me, health and fitness and sport is about joy. And everyone else seems to think it about pain, about being miserable, about giving things up. They think veganism's about giving things up. They think running's about giving things up. I don't. So that's the pressure of other people's opinions. And I try and keep my credibility by actually showing people there's a different side of things. So my Twitter bio, for example, says a healthy looking vegan rather than a pasty looking one. And on the private and public side, I think it depends on the forum we're talking about. And I'm assuming for this purposes, we're talking about a business forum. And business is totally, totally artificial. In the old days, to put food on the table, we'd have gone out, we'd have killed a porcupine, or we'd have dug up a yam. Now to put food on the table, we sell a management course. So business is totally artificial. And I think in that environment, you can choose what you want to disclose for your business purposes. So if I want to disclose that I'm vulnerable to build a relationship with my clients, I'll expose that. But I think the other stuff about, I don't know, whether I suffer from mental illness, whether I've got an addiction, I think that's more for being private with your family, with your friends, with people that really care about you. But yeah, I think sometimes it's very important to put a message across. And I really appreciate Herman say about his problems with alcohol, because it gives other people hope that they can deal with it as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts. And sorry about the meat. Oh, and I understand there's a Marmite shortage in South Africa at the moment, which would be really hell for me.
I must remember to be more. I must remember to be more inclusive in my language, Edward. I'm very sorry about that. But I'm very grateful that you remind me. So I won't. It won't get forgotten. Jasper, what is your thinking? Thank you for. I know you missed out in the last couple of days, so you're picking up a little bit. But I think you've got enough of the gist of it to get going.
Yes, I'll stick to the topic that I think you've announced, and that is the difference between the public and the private persona. So I'll share some of the stuff that comes up around that. And I think you're probably a very emotionally healthy being if there's not too much difference between the private and the public, because that means you have found your identity, you're comfortable in your identity. And hopefully, like Vanessa, you have tailored your behavior so it's not too offensive to too many people. But I think that's the unique thing about humanity, is that we are so diverse and yet so compatible. Because if I just look at the screen, we're probably 6 very uniquely not the same kind of individuals with stories that in a funny way have a lot of common ground of our journeys and self-discoveries and stuff like that. Yet if we start to drill deeper in topics that we normally avoid on platforms like this, like religion or spirituality or conspiracy theories and vaccine, I think we will quickly put a cat in a hornet's, what do you call it, a cat in a pigeon box or whatever, and it will just be feathers flying because we are we've learned to become socially respectful, and we, you know, over time, I think our senses pick up that I can press Trevor so far, and then I'm going to get resistance, and I can press Herman so far, and Ed so far, and Vinay so far. So I think our social intelligence have been well developed. That's what makes this platform quite an interesting platform. So I was just thinking of my last 2 days and how it's maybe a sample of, call it, my public persona. So I spend a lot of time in meetings with groups and potential businesses or existing businesses because of me now being, call it, pigeonholed as the banker. Then it gives me a platform to be in the meeting without being necessarily committed to the conversation, to see where it leads us and how can we then eventually help it. I've trained myself to be a good listener. I'm not normally a good listener, but to ask questions, but I find myself getting bored extremely quickly. So I have to really put myself in check not to give too much away in my body language. And I normally cover that up with asking a question here and asking a question there. And it spills over in my private life too. When I'm in family meetings, because I am so focused. So in my world, I'm wearing a lot of hats, but it's all one thing, and I'm extremely interested in that thing. And if you, by accident, stumble on one of the topics that stimulates me, hey, we can have discussions for hours and time just flies. But when I find myself in attending some family events, I'm very bored, and I don't know how to carry the conversation. And you ask a few, try and get a conversation going on some topics. But the real interesting one, we are equally stupid about. We can't really contribute, and so people's lives are almost such isolated circles that it's almost difficult to find the common ground unless you have something in common. So I think what this platform creates is, over time, we start picking up a sense of where is our common overlapping interest, and we keep on exploring that. And I think the diversity of opinion makes that it's fun to participate and not having to take responsibility for your opinion, because we're not affecting a business or a company or whatever. So it's that safe place that Vinay was referring to. And I think for the value for younger people growing up is to find that safe place where you can get honest feedback that can temper behavior, so that you can become, let's say, the oldies that we are today. And we are shaped by other people's feedback, and some of that was brutal feedback that we got wounded and got ourselves in a little corner and say, what do I do with that? And eventually got up and say, thank you, it was actually valuable feedback. So I see I must tackle Herman on Mocheng. Yeah, perhaps not today. So I think I think Ed said it, that business is false, but maybe our call it our public persona is false too, because depending on in what context or situation you see me operate, you will have a certain perception of who I am and what I like and what I, who am I? So in another setting, I would be the different person, because we have all these many facets. And I was just yesterday, I had an interesting meeting the last 2 days in the rabbit industry. A year ago, I didn't know there was a rabbit industry, but I've learned so much about farming and rabbits, and Herman, you would probably be very interested in this. but I got to learn about it and the passion behind it and how it works. And I even ate some rabbit meat on what is it, Thursday? No, Wednesday night. No, Thursday night. For Wednesday night, and pleasant, very, very tasty. But it was about almost the future and critical financial plans. So I switched on the financial side because I could ask a couple of questions there that got the conversation going. But I think people who experienced me in that session of the thing would have not liked me. Like often we don't like Trevor when he rolled down on people to say, what do you want? Give me 1 to 3, that kind of thing. So anyway, so then on other things, when it starts talking spiritual things that we did later in the day, it's a fun topic, and I can certainly keep my ground on that. So I think with all that rambling, Herman, I will connect you with the guys. Let me stop at that rambling. I have nothing to contribute.
I love Jasper's nothing. Meaty. Thank you, Jasper. You definitely brought the meat into the equation. Yeah, this is a topic that is very relevant for me. And as I mentioned yesterday, it was applicable being a young wife of a minister in a Methodist church. So I grew up in a Catholic church, and there aren't any ministers' wives in that denomination, interestingly enough. And so I had no role models. And so I'm now, and I didn't know there was a thing, quite honestly. There is this perception of what a minister's wife is. And I stepped into whatever those cat amongst the hornets that Jasper was talking about. And there were several times that I said the wrong thing to the wrong person in the wrong way because I assumed I could be myself. And it was very naive. So I quickly had to learn to rein in my opinion or my thinking or a story. And so that was one. And the reason that I did that, and we think about, well, is it because you are afraid of other people's expectations? Well, I had to deal with that their people's expectations are that this is what you are like. And I had to think about that a lot. How much do I allow other people's opinions to dictate my behavior? And I got to the point of saying, I want to be myself. I can't be the box. I can't be the person that they think is in this box. But at the same time, and Jasper used the word, there's a responsibility. So I was not there under my own auspices. I was there representing a partnership with my husband. And this is his job. This is his calling. This is his, and so there is a sense of my participation in that to support, to ensure that there's something that we are doing that is ensuring that he can be in the best possible light and place. And what other people think about you in an environment that is largely run by volunteers is actually a real thing. So I definitely had to learn, and Herman, I think, used the word context. I definitely had to learn, and for me, and I think maybe Vernay mentioned this as well, it was about trust. Yes, there are certain contexts that I felt freer or felt more that I could trust the people in that circle, or to be able to share a little bit more about more personal things. And I also felt that it was important, even in larger groups, to be vulnerable. This, I didn't mean, so there was this aspect of making sure, just sussing out the situation as to where I could or couldn't say something. But there were also occasions where if I'd worked, this was the rule that I don't say rule, but this is what I worked out for myself, is if I'd worked through something, in other words, it wasn't a fresh, I hadn't just had a fight with my husband and I was now talking about marital arguments, that if it wasn't fresh, that I had actually processed it, like my burnout, for instance. This was a very deep, dark, tough time in my life, which I can freely talk about now. And I don't mind sharing that because I've processed it, I've got through it, I understand how it worked. And when I share about that, it helps other people to recognize they're not in this alone. There are other people who've been there and they can get through it as well. And so there is a place for that, that I think is really important for us to share from our realness. For me, it's about being real and not just having the mask. The last thing I want to say is I haven't been a minister's wife for about 6 or 7 years. My husband stepped out of a local church environment and is still very involved in his what's important for him in the life of the church, but I don't have a role anymore. And it's interesting how stepping out from that, I did not realize how for over 30 years, it was a subtle but heavy cloak. And not where, I'm getting emotional, not having that is just a relief. So it's really interesting to, sorry, I didn't mean to, it shows how real it is that to not have that awareness that has just sit on your head the whole time. So
if I can come in, how powerful is that? And that for me is what comes across from this particular forum here, Lee, and why I talk of, and I think I differ to Herman. And listen, you can see if I take something out of my silliness box, is that perhaps one word that could describe me going back almost 70 years is naughty. So I've done a few naughty things, and just in case you've misinterpreted me, Ed, I've never smoked like some people I see in this world, and I've never taken drugs. But listen, I'm not going deeper into that naughty box at the moment. But I think it is about how, and Lee, this is what you're sharing from me, and what I think is very important for us to share here, and where I'm buying into Herman. He says, share these downside things so that other people don't get trapped into, and you talk of it as a cloak. I think I'm interpreting Herman to say that by sharing the downside, and as you sharing this, the darkness of, what did you call it? Man, I can't remember the word. You just had this burnout. That's what you're doing. Everyone actually gets into that, and you tend to be burnt out because you're living to other people's expectations instead of your own expectations for yourself and what you want to achieve. And I used that word while you were talking, compromise. Compromise is a two-way thing, especially within a marriage. And you have to be open enough to be able to turn around and say, hey, listen, this is why I'm supporting you, hubby. But I also need you to support me in the direction that I'm actually going. And I think that's where mature compromise comes in. But if you had to talk to my wife, that little box that I talk of as being a naughty box, she will talk of it being a linen kist, if not a blooming banker's security vault. But I don't agree with it. But Lee, I love the sharing. And I think this is what Wisdoms is about. How we actually go down the road of how people are affected and what you can learn from these inputs. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, it's funny how you can talk and it just presses a button here.
Yep. And everyone's got those buttons. Herman hasn't found mine yet. I'm trying to find his, but we'll get there.
Just don't take my castle. That's my button.
Well, thank you, everybody. So that really brings our conversation to an end. So is there something that has stood out for you that you'd like to pick up on Monday?
Lee, unfortunately Mondays I can't attend because I'm going to the farm quite early. You actually showed something which a lot of us are trying to hide, yet it's critical that we are actually able to share and show our vulnerability. Maybe that could be a point of conversation. I would love to be a part of it, so I'm not sure whether I suggested for Monday, but showing vulnerability and I once read somewhere that we should treat our wounds as assets rather than as liabilities. And I think that's the kind of direction I'm suggesting with talking about vulnerability.
Thanks, Herman. I think it's a great topic. I mean, I think of Brene Brown, whose entire career and she's become renowned as a vulnerability expert. And so I think it is a very topical topic. So yeah, let's go down that route. Thank you, Herman. I'm sorry you won't be here, but we'll obviously be recording it, so you'll be able to share in it in that way. So yes, sorry. So I'm going to stop the recording, but please don't disappear because Jasper has raised a point that I would like us all just to talk about for a moment.